Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be watching this video about real estate prices. We've all been wondering, why haven't real estate crashed yet? Personally, I've been like, real estate prices have stayed, seems like real estate prices have stayed sky high a lot longer than people thought they would, even with crazy interest rates. I'm looking around, the houses just sold in my neighborhood for about double what it was worth 5 years ago. It doubled in price in 5 years, up to about $600,000, and was sold, and interest rates are now at like 5 to 6%. So people are paying top dollar for houses while paying top percent for interest rates. How the heck have we not crashed? That's what I'm looking to watch this video so we can go ahead and learn that together. Make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed this content like this, and let's just jump right in.
Real home prices are going to fall, and it's going to cause a massive negative wealth effect.
See, that's something interesting, is whether this is a good or bad thing. For all the older people, all the people who own homes, who bought them 20 years ago for $195,000, and now they have a $700,000, $800,000 home. For those people, they could probably see this as a really bad thing, especially the ones that maybe in their late 40s, 50s, 60s that are looking to retire in the next 10 years. Those people especially could be looking to get hurt from this. However, for everyone else, for all the millennials, for all of us young people, all of us Gen Z, who would have absolutely no chance, no hope of getting a home in today's market. Like what, you're going to work, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a job making $25 an hour, 50 grand a year, and then somehow you're going to afford a home for $400,000 or $500,000, the same size as your parents, so you could raise a family. Like, the money doesn't work. Then you're going to be stuck in apartments. You're going to be, maybe if you're lucky, and have a pretty better job, you're like a nurse or something, but then you're still living in this $200,000-$300,000 house. You're living in a house worse than your parents, even though you're trying to make more. It's just a disaster. So I think the housing market collapsing is going to be a really good thing. But I guess we'll have to save that opinion until after we watch this video.
Real home prices, why it's going to happen based on reliable leading indicators, and what it's going to mean for the rest of the economy and the developing 2022 recession. To start, we're going to be looking at real home prices, or home prices after adjusting for inflation. Why real home prices and not nominal home prices? Real home prices are much more impactful for the wealth effect. Many people invest in real estate as an asset to beat inflation. If inflation is 10% and your home goes up 15%, you beat inflation by 5%, and
That's something important to look at whenever you're doing any sort of investing, is that it's always adjusting for inflation is a really good thing, because you're really not doing anything if you're not beating inflation. So it's, you're not doing much. So it's like, if inflation's at 10% this year, so things are bad. Investments that went up 5, 6, 7, 8%, they're underwater. They're actually losing money. And that's something that I just watched a video about previously that I think I learned a little bit about, is that this guy is predicting that home prices aren't going to go down. They're going to keep increasing, but they're not going to keep pace with inflation. They'd have to go up. Right now, inflation, last time I checked, was at 9.8% for this year. The year's not even close to being over. We got multiple months left. So if inflation's riding at 10% or higher, maybe it'll close the year at 11 or 12, maybe even 13%, then home prices might still rise by 5 or 6%, but really they're falling by 6 or 7%. That's probably the best way to do it, like, just for the economic well-being of the whole country. Any major crashes can cause really bad things to happen for the greater good of the society. So I think that what most likely is going to happen, or at least what I've heard, is that prices are just going to kind of slowly increase while inflation outpaces them, so that eventually we can catch up. But I don't know, that's not quite good enough for me. I want it to really crash, like break it down 70, 80%. So in like 6 years, I could be looking to buy a home. But that might be a little unrealistic and a little selfish of me.
You are 5% wealthier in real terms. If inflation is 10% and your home only goes up 5%, you lost 5% of your purchasing power in an asset that's supposed to give you protection, and you are actually worse off. Also, real home prices is the best measure of the true performance of real estate as an asset class across long periods of time. You can't compare home prices today to home prices in the 1970s without looking at it in real or inflation-adjusted terms. This chart shows real home prices since the 1970s.
That's very true. If you're not adjusting for inflation, then you can't actually compare now to the future or other different times in the past. You have to adjust for inflation so you can get an accurate view of how much homes cost now versus what they used to cost.
And you can see that real home prices have declined several times, mainly around the recessionary periods. The 2000s recession was an outlier in which home prices rose in real terms. The financial crisis in 2008 caused home prices to decline almost 30% in real terms, and it took until 2021 to regain the peak in real home prices from 2006, 15 years. If we look at the growth rate in real home prices, we can see that real home prices were rising at a 13% annualized rate in 2021, higher than the peak rate of home price growth in 2006. Real home price growth was positive from 1996 until mid-2006, 10 straight years, which created a prevailing belief that home prices don't fall. And here we have another 10-year period since 2012 where real home price growth was positive, and massively positive at that. Over the last 10 years, real home price growth averaged 4.5%, which is way higher than the 20-year average of 2%. Consumers and investors became accustomed to home prices rising sharply above the rate of inflation and a source of wealth building, particularly when using high amounts of leverage.
For comparison, guys, stocks, the real raising. For comparison, guys, stocks, the percent that they go up on average after inflation is about 6.7% per year, and that's over the last 200 years in the stock market. So the last 100 years, it's something like 8% or something like that. So let's just compare with whenever these numbers he's talking about with real estate.
Mortgage debt. With the feeling that home prices would always rise above inflation, and nearly 5% above inflation, a prevailing sentiment was born that you can leverage your way to wealth. But now, real home prices are starting to decline. 1 month is certainly not a trend, but this is where the EPB macro process becomes very powerful and why studying leading indicators is critical when determining what is noise and what is the start of a new trend. There are several key leading indicators of real home price growth, but we'll cover just 3. To be a leading indicator, it is not good enough just to look good on a chart. It has to make logical sense, have a proven track record of leading cyclical inflection points, and have a long history or sample. First,
I know of stocks that there's not much like this, so we can accurately predict like whether it's going to up or down. We really don't know. I don't know if real estate's any different. Seems like it is. Seems like this guy's at least telling us that it is. So we'll see what he's saying, but I really hope that it better involve some cause and effect, and it better not just be some correlations.
The month's supply of new homes. Month's supply is a measure that tells you how long it will take to clear the existing stock of inventory at the current pace of sales. This is an inventory metric, almost like the ratio of new orders to inventory for the manufacturing sector. This makes logical sense, as a higher month supply figure means that there's a growing imbalance between inventory and sales. In this chart, the month supply number is inverted, so when the green line is moving lower, that means the month supply figure is rising. You can see how the month supply indicator declined in advance of the 2007 price decline, and also in advance of the 2013-2014 downturn in real home price growth. It led the rise in real home price growth in 2019 before COVID. This metric also tells us why real home prices didn't decline in the 2000s recession. The month supply figure wasn't showing any signs of a downturn or any signs of an imbalance between inventory and sales. Today, the month supply indicator started to show signs of a top in real home price growth at the end of 2020, which led the actual peak in real home price growth by about a year. Today, there's a huge imbalance shown in the month supply data of new homes, and that is a very reliable leading indicator of coming declines in real home price growth. So based on this indicator, the 1 month decline that we've seen so far is not just noise. It's likely the start of a new trend. Next, we have to look at the spread between mortgage rates and treasury rates. The spread is way more informative than the mortgage rate itself because the spread represents risk. In this chart, the spread is inverted, so a wider mortgage spread is shown by the green line moving lower. Mortgage rates can decline because treasury rates are declining or because mortgage spreads are tightening. Declining treasury rates can reflect worsening economic conditions, which is why we have to separate whether the mortgage decline is coming from the treasury rate or from the spread. A widening mortgage spread preceded the decline in 2007, and a tightening mortgage spread was a strong indicator of a recovery in 2010. There was a false signal into the 2000s recession where spreads were suggesting worse home price growth that never materialized. This is why it's important to use a basket approach and look at many indicators and how
Okay, that's something interesting you just mentioned. So yeah, at least one of these approaches doesn't seem to be the most reliable. At least it messed up once in a major way. So it's definitely like looking at multiple of the ways that seem to work 70-80% of the time. When they all line up, you can maybe make a reasonable bet. I don't know about that though, because there might be 10 reliable indicators, and he might only be cherry picking 6, where like the 5 out of 6 of the 5 most popular, and 4 to 5 are like, oh, we're gonna collapse. So I'm not entirely convinced about this. That's the problem, is you can't. It's so hard to predict and speculate on the entire market when it's just so large. It's just so difficult. But hopefully this can give us at least a majority
versus rely on
chance
any
of a bet.
single
Like
indicator.
78%
The month
chance
supply
that whatever
metric
he's
was
predicting
not
will
showing
happen. We'll
signs
see.
of declining home price growth. So it's very important to take the signal from the collective basket versus any metric in isolation. Today, mortgage spreads are widening sharply, which is a negative sign for future home price growth. Lastly, we're going to look at real M2 growth, or real money supply growth, which is a bit more volatile or erratic, but it gives good, timely indications of recovery because excess liquidity will clearly help any asset price, including home prices. Major surges in real M2 growth lead to large increases in real home price growth, like we saw in 2020 and 2021, where real M2 growth exploded to a record high off the page in this chart, and that led to a record increase in real home price appreciation. Today, excess liquidity is not on the side of home price appreciation, and it's rather implying a sharp deceleration in real home price growth. So if we take the collective signal from the basket of 3 logical and proven leading indicators of real home price growth, the direction is clear. The month's supply of new homes is rising, which means home builders are going to cut back on production and reduce prices of their existing inventory. The mortgage spread is widening, which means mortgage lenders see greater risk in the housing market, and the Fed is rapidly tightening liquidity. So higher supply, more risk, and lower liquidity. This chart takes an average of the 3 metrics we just discussed, and the direction is a very reliable indicator over time, and it's clear about where real home price growth is heading. The collective signal from the basket is clearly lower, and we're already starting to have...
Alright, so this seems like a pretty accurate measurement. He put them all together into one graph, and it seems to follow pretty closely. There's definitely a few periods where it might drop, and the green graph's going up, but overall it seems to be a pretty accurate measurement. I would say this is a good chance that real estate's going to go down.
Declines. So why is this so important? As I mentioned at the start of this video, real home price growth is very important for the wealth effect. If home prices regularly rise 5% or 6% above the rate of inflation, consumers are getting wealthier just by owning a home, and many people use this appreciation as an ATM, drawing money out of their newfound equity. Obviously, this is not a wise strategy, but it's very common.
Home lines of equity, or home equity lines of credit. Those are very popular. I mean, those are basically, you can get hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of loans at a pretty low percent, usually about what your mortgage is, which ideally is like 2 or 3%. So, well, basically a lot of consumer spending, people are buying boats, RVs, stuff like that. It's probably coming from that. It's coming from home lines of equity credit. And like you just mentioned, definitely not a wise financial move. I would not recommend you do this. Loans in general just aren't a good idea.
People have become accustomed to using their home as a perpetual ATM, rising in value every year, and an endless stream of cash in the form of home equity lines of credit. If real home values are going to decline, meaning that the home is losing value to inflation, that means one of the largest assets for most people is causing them to be less well off. Most people's largest asset is a home. Most of their money is trapped in this illiquid asset. If it is massively outpacing inflation while you're doing nothing, great. You are wealthier and you have more purchasing power as a result. If your money is trapped in an asset that is losing value to inflation, then you are becoming worse off every day. Robert Shiller of Yale, famous for creating one of the best measures of home prices, the Case-Shiller Index, wrote a research paper on the wealth effect. The conclusion of the paper was that there is virtually no wealth effect at all from rising stock prices. Very few people, if any, borrow against their stock holdings, and no one really spends more money because their stock portfolio rose in value. It's simply too volatile. This is well documented in the research. However, the paper concluded that there was strong evidence of a wealth effect in the housing market. When home prices massively outpace inflation, people feel much better off, and they feel that that newfound equity is easily accessible and safe in the form of equity lines of credit. When real home prices decline, that will have a highly negative impact on the consumer psychology and contribute towards a downward spiral in consumption, one that we're already beginning to see with most people falling behind due to gas prices and food prices. So real home prices are going to start to decline, and it's going to cause a massive negative wealth effect that will amplify the intensity of this economic downturn that is already nearing recession.
AKA, in conclusion, yeah, this guy thinks we're going to be entering into a bit of a collapse. Let me know in the comments if you guys think he's right, and what you guys think whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Personally, kind of rooting for it myself. But in the next video, we'll go ahead and talk about probably good debt or bad debt. I don't know. Tell me, we can do the description below. Might be calling out Dave Ramsey. But subscribe, make sure you don't miss it. See you in the next one.